read beginning in chapter 7, verse number 1. You might remember the last time we were in this book, we talked about reunion, and we talked about how in chapter 6, returning chapter number 6, there was first a recognition that the beloved is different than the woman who is loved. And we've talked about how this is primarily a picture of Jesus Christ and his people. And we make no apology for saying this is more than just some kind of steamy journal of an encounter between the king and one of his many in the harem. We would say that Solomon is an inadequate picture of the perfect Son of God, Jesus. But he is a picture. And in the same way, the young woman is a picture of Jesus' one and only bride. And so you've done a good job of hanging with me. We did our first message in Song of Solomon in April, and here and there, I would bring another one up in front of you. And so here we are. This is, I think, number 10 or 11, and we're going to begin reading in chapter number 7. May God bless the reading of his word to our hearts as we take it in as one of the scriptures that is inspired of God and profitable for doctrine, reproof, correction, and instruction in righteousness, so that we can be thoroughly equipped for good works. So here we go. Chapter 7, verse number 1. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O prince's daughter. So this is King Solomon talking about his beloved, or I should say about his loved, dark-skinned shepherd girl, the love of his life. He calls her his dove in chapter 6, verse 9. Calls her his favorite wife in chapter 6 and verse 9. I mean, if you're going to be among several wives, it's good to be the favorite. And so I want you to picture, well, don't picture too much. As it says at the end of verse 1, the curves of your thighs are like jewels. Yeah, I hear you. The work of the hands of a skillful workman. Your navel is a rounded goblet. At least he didn't say your navel's like a punch bowl. That would tell us so there's that. It lacks no blended beverage. All right, buddy. And then this one has me a little flummoxed. Your waist is a heap of wheat. I think that knowing heaps of anything is not, what in the world should I say here? I have notes, but what's the point? The King James and the New King James, the King James says your belly is like that's somehow better. Your belly is a heap of wheat. You know, I think now if a young lady has a heap of wheat-shaped belly, we would think something is on the way. But there's no hint here of that. Rather, I think that they have a different understanding of beauty, and it wasn't get as skinny as possible at hazarding of your health. It appears here that Solomon found it to be very attractive for this lovely woman to have a waist that, I thought I was done doing this morning, getting all churchy and stuff with my language, making sure that if we had 6-year-olds in the room, I was careful, and I'm still trying to be careful, but it doesn't appear that he's looking for someone who's struggling with I'm trying to be sensitive here. It's not like he's looking for someone who would now be a Victoria's Secret model, like someone who has no body fat at all. Evidently, even here, that wasn't what you would see as a beautiful woman. And then verse number 3. But since we're verse by verse here in this church, here we are again. We're going to talk about her chest one more time. Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle. Well, maybe we're out of the thick of it here. No, we're going to talk about her neck that evidently is like Aborigines almost. Maybe a woman from the Amazon. Your neck is like an ivory tower. I hope that's talking about how well it's adorned and not its length. Your eyes like the pools in Heshbon, by the gate of Beth Ravim. Your nose, let's talk about your nose for a minute. It's like a tower of Lebanon. And it can see all the way to Damascus. You know, I do think they had a different understanding of beauty. I mean, when he's checking his dating app, likes long walks on the beach and women with big noses and bellies the shape of heaps of wheat. Okay. And he continues. This is getting really easy. Verse 5, your head crowns you like Mount Carmel. Okay, I can get that, I suppose. But the hair of your head is like purple. And the king is held captive by your tresses. Her tresses. Yeah, you're waiting for something deep there. Evidently, that is a reference to the structure of her collarbones and her shoulders. So he is interested in being very thorough in his praise of her. And then he gets a little more abstract, which is good for a Sunday night service. How fair and how pleasant you are, O love, with your delights. This stature of yours is like a palm tree. And let's talk about your breasts one more time. They're like clusters on a palm tree. I mean, how does one respond to that? Maybe we're done talking about that. I'll go up to the palm tree and take hold of its branches. No, we're not done talking about it, I guess. Let now your breasts be like clusters of the vine. And while I'm this close to you, maybe we can talk about your breath. Verse number 8. The fragrance of your breath. Some translations say nose. I don't know what sense it would make to say your nose smells like apples. It's a common translation behind breath, but it's otherwise translated in ways that appear like an exhale, like the fragrance of your exhale, your breath, your nose. You can see why nose is sometimes chosen as a translation. It's not a bad translation, but I do understand why the New King James says breath. The fragrance of your breath is like apples, which I think we can agree is tolerable. You're rolling over to kiss your wife, her breath smells like apples, that's good, right? There are other smells, aren't there? Yeah. Verse 9. Let me talk about the roof of your mouth for a moment. We talked about your breath. It's like the best wine. Now, you talk about awkward. Let's have a Baptist preacher talking about how important it is to know the taste of the roof of your wife's mouth and then compare it to wine that you never drink. I'm sure it's amazing. The wine goes down smoothly for my beloved, says the woman. So she's responding, not with saying, gross, get away from me. You're always thinking about sex. No, she says, yeah, wine that's going to go right down your gullet, nice and smooth. Alrighty. Moving gently, the lips of sleepers. I, my beloved's, and his desires toward me. She's still talking in verse 11. Come, my beloved, let's go forth to the field. Let's lodge in the villages. Let's get up early to the vineyards. Let's see if the vine has budded, whether the grape blossoms are open, the pomegranates are in bloom, and there I will give you my love. Some are like, is this one euphemism after another? Is this just one sexual reference after another? No, this actually seems like this is legitimately talk of real fruit in a real garden, and they're going to find a way to, what would the Hebrews say? Get it on outside in the garden. Look at the end of verse 12. Am I making this up? We're going to find some pomegranates and some blooming vines, and I'm going to give you my love right there. Okay. I'm having a hard time believing King Solomon's going to resist. The mandrakes. Okay, let's talk about aphrodisiacs for a minute. Love potions. The mandrakes give off a fragrance My in-laws are here tonight. This is super comfortable for me to be talking about. How are you feeling about this? Nothing awkward about this. Welcome, Mom and Dad. The mandrakes give off a fragrance, and at our gates are pleasant fruits. All manner, new and old, which I have laid up for you, my beloved. Okay, maybe we're done being weird. No, we're not. She's still talking. Oh, that you were like my brother, who nursed at my mother's breasts. Okay. There is a reason why there were weeks in between these Song of Solomon sermons, because I looked at every book that I owned, digital, paper, hardcover, you name it. I was like, someone please help me with this verse. And that is why you got a couple messages on the Psalms, and you got a Frankie, and you got a few others in there. And here we are, because I'm buying time. Like, what in the world am I supposed to tell these dear people of God that this is somehow a picture of Christ and his church. So she says to him, I wish that you were like my brother, who nursed at my mother's breasts. If I should find you outside, I'd kiss you. I would not be despised. You wouldn't turn me away. I would kiss you. I would not be despised means I wouldn't take no for an answer. So she is about as drunk of love as you can be. And she says in verse 2, I would lead you. Here we go again. This is interesting, I guess. I would lead you and bring you into the house of my mother. She who used to instruct me, I would cause you to drink of spiced wine of the juice of my pomegranate. So after I'd get you into the house of so I think what she's saying is, I wish you were just like my brother, because then I could get you into my mother's house and she wouldn't say anything about it. That's my best guess. Some of you, dear people, we're not looking for help right now. I don't need any ideas from your Bible study Bible, notes, great ideas, jokes, riddles, poems, interpretive dances, words of knowledge. I don't care what you have to say about that right now. There will be other times when I want to know what you say. But while you're thinking about it, consider how she's trying to lower his inhibitions in verse 2. I'm going to give you something special to drink. It goes with the mandrakes back there in verse 13. I hear you. And we're going to be together in ways that we have not been before. I mean, I will admit to you, I would think that if you're going to give your significant other a card, it wouldn't say something like, I wish we were full siblings. I'm so thankful that we have changed in our culture somewhat, in some ways. I think she's simply saying that she's looking for a way. And in chapter 3, they get married. So I don't know exactly if this is a flashback to pre-marriage days. Why would she need to sneak her husband back into her mother's house? Maybe there was a cultural rule that says, no kings in shepherds' homes. Don't know. A little cryptic to me. But what seems is that she wants him in the most comfortable place she knows of. And where is the most comfortable place she knows of? The place she was raised. So she wants this King Solomon to enjoy the place that she is most comfortable, most herself, and it would be back where she was raised. I think we can agree, given the fact that Leviticus was written before this, that we are a long ways removed from siblings doing what Cain had to do. So we're not getting kooky or kookier here. Then we get to verse number 3. It looks like she is now happy that they're laying next to each other back where she was raised. His left hand is under my head, his right hand embraces me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, don't stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. So and now it looks like they are back at her mother's house, and they are sharing a bed. And so I want you to consider just comparing, please, chapter 2. Look at chapter 2, verse 6 and 7, and compare it with chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. Just take a moment and look at those. So you're comparing chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, with chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. Bryson Call was helping me understand today how a song can have lots of different movements in it. So it's a very long song if there isn't breaks to go from one movement to the next. You always know someone who's new to this classical music idea because they clap at the wrong spot. Oh, the song's over, and they're the only person in the place clapping, only to find out, stop clapping, they're still playing. They just went to a different movement. You know you're within a different movement, but the same song, or I should say you know you're in the same song, even if you're in a different movement, by the fact that parts of the song keep repeating throughout that piece. Different themes. And so it seems like verses 3 and 4 of chapter 8, having been a repeat of chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, are the part of the song repeating to let you know we're still in that Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. So this is a song, it's not just a biography. Let me pause there and see if there are any questions so far. David Poovey, that's the first time I've ever seen you raise your hand. Oh, okay. Obviously, it wasn't the first time I've ever seen him raise his hand. All right. You guys are easy. So then we get to verse 5 of chapter 8. Who is this coming up from a wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? I awakened you under an apple tree. There your mother brought you forth. There she who bore you brought you forth. All right, this was confusing to me too. Because it looks like in verse number 5, we're talking about the woman who is leaning on King Solomon. And that seems easy because we have the word her that comes through easily in the English translations. She's leaning upon her beloved. Okay, see it now. They're coming back from mother's house maybe? And they're coming back towards Jerusalem possibly? And she is leaning on the chest of King Solomon. And then she is most definitely talking in the rest of verse 5. I awaken you under the apple tree. Now, how do I know that? Because you is second person masculine singular. That's in the Hebrew. It's not clear in the English. So she is speaking to a man. I awakened you under the apple tree. There your, again, second person, masculine singular. There your King Solomon, your mother brought you forth. There she who bore you brought you forth. The reason this confused me is, are they at her mom's house or his mom's house? Because she's talking about getting him back to her mom's house in 8:2. But she says she found him under the apple tree at his house, at his mom's house in 8:5. So my best guess here is that this is a flashback to where they met outside. They have a thing for these outside encounters. Just to remind you, look back at the end of chapter number 1, where you were perhaps very uncomfortable once. Notice chapter 1, verses 16 and 17, where she says to him, you're handsome, my beloved, pleasant, and our bed is green. The beams of our houses are cedar, and our rafters are fir. In other words, they have certain encounters that are not indoors. And so they find an outside place to snooze in chapter 2, verses 6 and 7. And that's why she's ready to talk about nature and stuff in 2:12. The flowers appear on the earth. Okay. So what is the takeaway for you, especially if you're single? Well, I think that probably Christians could probably rekindle the idea of romance even with someone they've been married to for decades. I am not saying we now have a proof text for you to find a rooftop somewhere and make sure everyone knows who you're with. I am saying that probably Christians are too often guilty of trying not to talk too much about lovemaking. Almost as if, I'm going to go on a limb here, unlike what I've been doing the last 20 minutes, that usually when we raise our children to stay pure, we almost lead them to believe that sex is shameful and needed only for reproduction. When that should not be what you get out of this book at all. For some of you who wish that we would just get back to talking about Jesus and his church, I'll get there in a second. I just want to point out that it seems like that we should expect that along with the desire to be with one's spouse intimately into the twilight years, that the Apostle Paul was right when he said the best way to be tempted with going outside of your marriage is to assume that your spouse doesn't want intimacy anymore. He said in 1 Corinthians 7, the best cure for fornication is for each other to regularly give each other their bodies. And we're going to keep saying that. Evidently, we still believe it because there's kids everywhere. So hopefully we'll always be at that church where it's clear mommy and daddy love each other very much, since that's how all those speeches begin. Anyways, so in chapter 8, verse 5, it looks like she is flashing back to when she met him outside under an apple tree near his mom's house. And who was King Solomon's mother? Bathsheba. Well-known lady. Verse 6, set me as a seal upon your heart. This should make sense based on verse number 5, where she's leaning on the heart of her beloved. And she so loves being upon his heart that she says, make me a seal there. Set me like a piece of jewelry upon your heart, a seal upon your arms. And then she gives reasons. Love is as strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The Shulamite woman is speaking here as this, definitely she's talking to a male. It must be her beloved. It must be King Solomon. And she says, I would like to be worn like jewelry. I don't think that this is just a reference to saying, can we always be making love? I do think that it means that she knows that no matter how intimate they are, there will be times when they are not together. And she wants to be able to compete well with those 140 women mentioned in chapter 6, verse 8. And she would like to make sure that she is always the favorite. Now, we would say, as we've said before, that this is not a perfect picture of Christ and his church, but it is a picture of Christ and his church. And so what we should be doing is praying, or at least hoping, or at least wishing, or at least thinking, or at least talking to our Lord Jesus, that he would always wear us on his heart. And we would say that we want to be on his heart because of the reasons given in verse number 6, because love is so strong, it makes people die. And we would say that Christ had love that was very strong, even to death. Jealousy is as cruel as the grave. And so you're supposed to see the word jealousy in a strong, and get this please, we have so corrupted love and masculinity and femininity and intimacy that even words like jealousy don't mean what they once meant. Jealousy, as cruel as the grave, means that I would fight anyone all the way to Sheol, is the word there behind grave. I'd fight anyone as far as Hades to protect the love of the woman who's supposed to be on my heart. Jealousy is here seen as the rightful protection of something that you already have, whereas covetousness is the unrighteous affections for things that don't belong to you. And I know that jealousy is often seen negatively because often it is seen as a measure of being controlling and domineering and always wanting to manipulate and control. But it is pure love that this woman wants. She wants the pure love from the beloved that says, I love you enough that I will fight to keep your affection. That kind of jealousy. The kind of jealousy that the Lord said in Exodus 19, I am jealous. So you'll have no other gods before me. And so in verse 7, many waters cannot quench love, nor can the floods drown it. And if a man would give for love all the wealth of his house, it would be utterly despised. He would despise his wealth on the way out of his front door if he could simply protect pure love from his woman. Yes, I meant to say it that way because we don't talk like that much anymore. Some of you brothers have heard me tell you that one of the most attractive things about their marriage is that their wife is obviously adoring them and not in some sort of blind, stupid fairy tale, my husband does no wrong. Because certainly this woman was clear on the fact that Solomon was anything but perfect. But their love they had for each other Well, it covered a lot of stuff. It would follow people to the grave. It would burn down anything in between them. End of verse 6. Flames of fire. It has flames. Consider that love has flames. Its flames are flames of fire, a most vehement flame. And many waters. Since we're going to talk about how love is a big flame in 8:6, we're going to mention that if it's a flame, you're probably thinking, well, it can be quenched, it can be drenched. Nope, verse 7, no amount of any flooding from any 1,000-year hurricane can wash out the flames of fervent, fiery, violent, beautiful, protective, jealous love. That is the love we should seek in our marriages. It is the love that we should seek from the Savior of the world, who among seeing us as the branches on his vine and the blocks on his foundation and the sheep in his pasture and the body parts attached to the head, he sees us also in this picture of union as members of the bride, and we should be saying, keep loving me with hot flames of love, and I will keep loving you with hot flames of love, and we will fight anything that threatens our love of each other. Even Spurgeon is unclear about, are we talking about the love of her for him or the love of him for her? And Spurgeon says, we're not really sure from the context, and let's not mess it up. Let's talk about both directions of love. Then, it's pretty clear she thinks he's going to be away. And the reason I think that she thinks he's going to be away is not only verse 6 saying, remember me, stick me right on your heart, wear me like a locket on your heart, never forget me, she says to him. It looks like in verse number 14, make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle. She's talking to him and saying, or a young stag on the mountains of spices. It seems like she's saying, hurry back, make haste. Let's just compare a passage here. Look at chapter 2. You'll notice we haven't left Song of Solomon. Look at chapter number 2. I want you to notice verse number 8. Just a reminder, we talked about this one on a Wednesday night in May. The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes. So coming, and look what he's doing, leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. So the beloved is not with her, but she hears him coming and sees him running on the mountaintops to get to her. And so I'm reading that into chapter 8. Look at chapter 8 again, where the book closes. The Song of Solomon closes with her saying, hurry up and come back. What does that sound like? Doesn't that sound like, besides a controlling husband, hey, what are you doing? Hey, or a controlling wife, hey, what are you doing? Did you get the milk? It's not that. You're supposed to step away from that and see. You're supposed to step away and see. Here is a woman who doesn't want to be separate from her husband very long. So, this is how the book of Revelation ends, isn't it? The husband is away from the wife, and she says, even so, come, Lord Jesus. So what should you expect while you're waiting for the Lord to return for his people? The woman is still talking in chapter 8 and verse 5, 6, and 7. And then someone cuts into the conversation. You need this sermon. If people frustrate you when you're trying to serve God, because in chapter 8 and verse number 8, the most awkward verse I've ever read in church. We have a little sister and she has no breasts. What shall we do for our sister in that day when she is spoken for? I thought, how can I skip this verse? So this is evidently the big brothers mentioned back in chapter 1, verse 7. Take a look there, everyone. Look at chapter 1, verse 6. Chapter 1, verse 6. Don't look upon me because I'm dark, because the sun has tanned me. My mother's sons are angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard I've not kept. So it's pretty clear, I think from there, that she has older brothers, if not half-brothers or step-brothers. Looks like half-brothers, at least. But then the question is, who are they? But I don't know. So we get to chapter 8, and they talk. And it looks like the reason that they made her stay in the vineyard is because they thought she was too young to be gallivanting around town. It's not like it turned out well later in the Song of Solomon She had her veil taken from her, and she was slapped around in the streets. And so they talk about her like she's immature. In verse number 8, I know this is awkward for everyone, sorry. Normatively, let me add that very important word in there. Normally, we would say that young men and women are ascertainably getting more mature physiologically because certain parts of their physiology grow. Man, where am I? It's like 7th grade health class, it's just... And so they're trying to talk about her as though she is still in that stage of life. She's too little, too young to go out and be a part of another life. Verse 9, if she's a wall, we'll build upon her a battlement of silver. And if she's a door, we'll enclose her with boards of cedar. It should be pretty clear they want to keep her at home. They're not interested in her leaving for good. And so what would you do if you were pretty sure that you were ready to leave the house? Well, I suppose you'd say something like she says in verse 10. I'm a wall, and my breasts are like towers. Okay. And evidently she thought what was said in verse 8 from her brothers was inappropriate and fighting words. Because they say, young lady, you're not fully developed yet and ready for this marriage life. And she responds with, you just don't know. Everyone feeling all right here? We're almost done. I became in his eyes as one who found peace. And Solomon had a vineyard at Baal-Hamon, and he leased the vineyard to keepers. Everyone was to bring for its fruit 1,000 silver coins. So you need this message tonight if you are finding yourself being underestimated by those who are supposed to be preparing you for the return of your husband, Jesus Christ. In chapter 8, verse 8, we have family basically saying their sister's too young to marry and that they will do what they need to protect her. And that's even if they have to board her up like a door with boards over it. She, of course, declares she's plenty fine and being a woman that she is, and she expects to be respected. And so maybe there are people in your life that are not helping you onto maturity in Christ, and they are questioning whether you are even fit to be one of the Lord's. And they probably wonder whether you are ready for certain things in your spiritual life. If that's you, then this actually is speaking to you, however awkwardly. I don't know that I would sign this with my signature on any greeting cards, but you could say, in fact, I am growing in the Lord, and I am ready for him to return. Even if you think that I'm immature and not exercising my gifts, I am waiting for my one and only Prince Charming to come, and that's that. So I don't know what you need. Maybe you need a mature Christian in your life, someone who will say, not only are you getting more and more ready for your Lord's return, your husband's return, but I can be a part of that as well, appropriately in the right setting. So one thing you can do tonight maybe is to walk on into a late evening conversation when you get home, or maybe even here, and find someone that will actually encourage you in your walk and not always question your fittedness for the Lord. Confidence of mature and equipped and happy believers with more grace than you know or feel you're aware of. I think we could all use someone who will look at us and see some grace in us. And so if you're doubting whether God's grace is even moving in you, find someone who's older than you in Jesus and ask them if they see any fruit of the Spirit in you. But don't find a grump. Don't find someone who's so mature in Jesus, they haven't told their face how happy they really are. I've got joy. Tell your face. I think happiness is so shallow. Yeah, but it's so a lot more fun to live through life with some happiness. So I don't know why we find people that are just as miserable as we are in a moment, and we just have this feedback loop where we just, doesn't life stink? Yeah, it sure does stink. Maybe we should eat worms. Let's eat worms. You need this message tonight if you don't see yourself as a steward of what has been left in your hands. Evidently, he was leaving and left his vineyard in her hands. You might notice in verse number 12, Solomon says to her, my own vineyard is before me. She says, my own vineyard is before me. You, O Solomon, may have 1,000, and those who tend its fruit 200. You notice in verse number 11, Solomon had a vineyard at Baal-Hamon, and he leased the vineyard to keepers. So it seems as though she knows that his vineyard is in other people's hands. And she has her own vineyard, she says in verse 12. And that word may there, provided by the translators, you, O Solomon, may have 1,000, and those who tend to its fruit 200. It seems as though she is interested in helping with his vineyard while he's gone. And in verse 13, he responds, you who dwell in the gardens, the companions listen for your voice. Let me hear it. It seems like he expected her to do something with his vineyard while he was away. If you don't value what the Lord has put in your charge to handle while he's away, then this will go completely past you. All you're going to do is sit around this week and say, I didn't really care for Song of Solomon. It made me feel a little weird. Who cares what it made you feel like? Sometimes your feelings lie to you. And you should look past your little, it just gave me the willies. Maybe you should be a little deeper than that. Maybe you should see that God is doing something and he's kept you to occupy a vineyard, Matthew 21:33. And that he expects, according to verse 11, that people are keeping his vineyard while he's away. So I don't know what he's left you in charge of or to manage while he's out of town, but he hasn't changed his mind and he probably hasn't relieved you. So what you can do tonight is you can manage things with the humility of a servant, the responsibility of a queen to a king, and the joy of a watching and waiting and working object of his affection. So take inventory tonight. What has God given you to do, and how's it going? You're running out of time. Let me pause there. Are there any questions? The last sign that you needed this message is you're troubled about being forgotten. Why is she asking in verse number 6, please remember me? Wear me like jewelry on your heart. Is there any assurance that the beloved King Solomon, the picture of Jesus Christ, is not listening to her, the woman of Shulam, who is a picture of us, the church? Is there any sign that he has resisted her this entire book? Is there any sign that she loves him more than he loves her? The answer should be resoundingly no. It should be very clear to you that the Lord loves encounters with his people more than they enjoy encountering him. If you get anything out of the Song of Solomon, it should be that the Lord is consistently instigating affection with us when frankly we're not in the mood for it, so it's not like we have to beg for him to notice us. If there's any chance that he would say, let me hear your voice in 8:13, look at the end of the verse. Let me hear your voice, woman. I want to know that you miss me. If there's any chance that he would say that and not want to hold her close, then he's misleading her entirely. And that is why I say he wants her on his heart more than she wants to be there. So today, this evening, you don't love him more than he loves you. And that should take a great deal of comfort and shove it deep into your soul. Because the fact that he loves you more than you love you means that he's willing to do for you things that you're not interested in doing for you. You know you need this. If you find yourself not enjoying much anymore, I want to ask you to enjoy the fierceness of his love, which is as strong as death. Or I can't improve upon this sermon preached by Charles Spurgeon in 1858. Does he choose and then refuse? Does he justify and then condemn? Does he press to his bosom and afterwards reject with distaste? It's not so. If you've seen Niagara, which is really saying something for a guy in London, if you've seen Niagara in its tremendous strength, leaping from its rock, staying in its mid-current, some mighty imagination might conceive that stream changing its course and ascending up the falls and climbing the hills instead of leaping downward in its strength. But even then, no imagination can conceive of the love of Christ retracing its eternal pathway and returning to him without a lover of their soul. Would he ever plan a redemption to bring people to heaven whom he never intended to bring? Or would he lose those whom he ordained to save? He hath said, and he will do it. You have then here in this passage another reason why you should pray that your name may be upon Christ's heart and upon his arm, because once there, it is there forever. So says the great apostle Charles Spurgeon. And we would say, if we could take you all over the Bible, we would, to prove to you that it is not your idea to be remembered as much as it is his idea to remember you, and that it is not your desire to be continually loved while he is away for the short time, but that he has all intentions of never not loving you. So since that's true, what you can do tonight with that truth is lean heavily into the assurance that you are loved more than you love him or that you love yourself. And because he loves himself more than he loves you, he can love you more than you love yourself. I meant to say everything I just said. Because he loves himself more than he loves you, he can love you more than you love yourself. Because to rightly love himself is to love purity. And because he loves himself in all of his pureness, he's not like King Solomon. He is totally pure, lives in a pure place, makes purity, never does anything impure. And because he loves his own holiness more than he loves your perceived need, that means that he can love you rightly more than you've ever been loved or want to be loved or can love yourself, because you are, a result of perfection loving his own perfection. So assume that he loves you so much that as you lean on him, you discover that your delays are his ways of getting you to the right appointments at the right time. Plan as if you are being graded, but trust him as though you've already been graded and scored 100 in Christ's name. Return the phone call tonight to that person you have been avoiding. You have enough love to call and say something like, I want to talk to you. I have 5 minutes and I wanted to touch base with you. What can I help you with? And then say something like, hey, look, I'm going to get off the phone here and continue with something I've been working on. But Christians should be just so moved, so enraged, the word is ardor. There should be an arduousness about us deep in our souls that knows we're loved and lifts the chin and lives in joy because we have never not been on his heart. Even today. The high priest is at the right hand of the Father with the names of his people upon his breastplate as the great high priest. He has never not loved us. And if you are one of his elect, hear the words of our brother Spurgeon, he will not elect and then reject you. So today, lay your head on your pillow with a clean conscience, knowing that love is so strong that he would go all the way to Hades to protect you. And he did. I'm going to ask my father-in-law, Brother Dave Knopfler, would you please ask God to bless this message to our hearts?